Thank you.
I was just wondering, back to the Illustrator thing, if, so you break it up by pages, is there ever any, like they sort of go off and do their own thing, but do you ever have like any other stage directions?
So sorry. Okay.
Just do you ever describe, I guess what I was gonna say, like, what you imagine the image that goes along with the text being, or is that like totally the illustrator just sees the words?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I'll answer this question. Maybe we can come to one answers online. But yeah, you can as a writer, you can.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
Okay. Got it?
Yeah, thank you. As a writer, you can include kind of like some art direction notes, or like what you're picturing for as like an illustration. But I'd say like very much keep those to like a minimum. Like just I usually, yeah, I just like normally it's just like very minimal art direction notes just to kind of what you're picturing as like, well, they're in a tropical environment for the main monster, like and then like yeah, because you want to let the illustrator do the magic. Yeah, thank you.
Good question, right, which somebody asked. What happens when you don't like to use friction? No, it's just not looking like you don't like it.
Thankfully I didn't have that experience. I think it's part of it is like trusting your publisher and to find one and that.
Did it give you like first, this is what it would look like, and you get to choose if you don't like it from the get-go?
I remember for one of them, like the publisher had a few illustrators in mind, and like I remember like with the Mango Monster with when I saw Minika's artwork, I'm like, it's just so fun and like colorful and like oh, like I would love if and it works out that way, but I think it is a bit of like kind of yeah, finding the right publisher and trusting the publisher and trusting the artist as well, because it does become very much, it does become a shared vision of like the artist and the illustrator and you as the writer.
Okay. Hi. I'm wondering, have you noticed writing in both adult and children's genres? Have you noticed them influencing each other in your creative process at all?
That is a good question. I find when I write adult, I find it a bit more freeing because I don't have to think like, oh, would a child like I'm not thinking in that child like voice. And so I find writing adult now is a bit more freeing in some ways, but writing for children is also like really there's so much play involved as well. So thank you. That's a good question though. Sorry if I've gone over as well, just out of time.
A very similar question, but before that, I grew up in Pakistan and we have incredible mangoes, and I think every summer I become a mango monster as well. So I'm trying to find ways how to get them to Toronto. But just building on the previous question, I think on the creative process, I'm curious if you do these like you oscillate between adults and children's sequentially, or do they also do them in parallel? Because, for instance, if you see them as a bit of a respite from writing for adults, and that gets the creative juices flowing, perhaps. So just curious.
Yeah. First off, mango lover, yes. Yeah, as I said, it is. For me, it works because sometimes when I get stuck on something, I feel a bit freeing to like just park it and then work on something else. And children's is great for that because again, they're smaller projects. They're it does take a long time. Like I always say, like everything in publishing takes it's like years in advance. Everything in children's publishing is like even longer in advance because you have to give time for the illustrator to do their work. But yeah, I've personally found it works for me. I could see where some authors maybe like you're dividing your focus between projects. I could see that maybe as well, but so maybe a bit of that, but I think it's worth doing and trying and experimenting and see what First for you as a writer.
Thank you very much. Give it up for Derek.
And yeah, think about your writing exercise and we'll come back to it after, okay?
Okay, so we will move on to the readers. Oh. First, do you need a minute to try and get your stuff out or just gonna?
No, I'm good.
You're good, okay. So now that we're reaching the world on our very own Brockton YouTube channel, we hope that you will, like and subscribe to us, because it really helps get us up in the old algo. And do we have the QR code? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Oh, we do that, yes.
Yeah, okay.
It's not really.
It's fine. This is the time we project a QR code, for pay what you can donations to help support Brockton and also to follow us on our socials. So snap a picture, get those socials, boost us, help get us on people's screens so that they come. And you can also donate to us because we do pay people for the speaking and for the reading. We think it's really important to pay artists for their work. And we will move on to the readers. Pratap Reddy immigrated to Canada from India in 2002, writing mostly about the angst and the agonies and sometimes the ecstasies of immigration. He is the author of Weather Permitting and Other Stories, Ramya's Treasure, Shards of Verse, and The Remaindered People and Other Stories. He's currently working on a novel tentatively titled Fool's Errand set in India. He serves on the boards of Bootmakers, the Sherlock Holmes Society of Canada, and Diaspora Dialogues, a nonprofit which supports new and encourages emerging writers. He lives in Mississauga with his wife and son. Yeah. On this way, so you don't blind it, I wanna make sure.
Whether I find it's not all the so.
Thanks.
I can, yeah. So.
Okay, hi.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you, Brockton Series, for inviting me. I had attended long ago when I was a wannabe writer. I was invited to read from my stories when it was held in a church. It was a long time ago. And then later, I think, Clare Bookshop, it was elsewhere, I think. Yes, so I'm not a novice here, and I had the pleasure of participating in this unique series. I'll be reading from a story from my latest collection, Remaindered People and Other Stories. My very first book was about immigrants from India to Canada. And the first few months or first couple of years, after immigration, how hard it was. We come from a British Commonwealth country, but it's so difficult to, integrate and settle down. You don't get jobs in your line of work, all those things. So I wrote stories around them, and since then I've written a novel, and this is my fourth book, that's the second collection. Here I focused on aspects which are not usually explored about immigration, because immigration, most of us think that it happens after you have landed in Pearson Airport. It's not so. Many things happen back home in Canada. So I focused on those problems, which empty nesters who live in home countries, people who come here find it so hard to adjust to Canada in the kind of society we have here, that the challenges the immigrants face, they tend to go back. What about the children who grew up here in Canada? What about people who want desperately to immigrate but won't succeed because of the point system and all that, right? That kind of thing. So I focused on those aspects, not all the stories, but many of them. So I'll be reading from one story, and in this story, an older woman is compelled to immigrate because her adult children have, her adult son has immigrated to Canada. So what would her life? She comes unwillingly to Canada, right? So this is the story, the very first story in this book is called Sweet Memories, and I'll read from here. Sweet Memories. Through the small window of the basement room in which she was confined, she could see a patch of blue, a tiny piece of the sky. She felt a deep attachment to that only window in the room. Every now and then, it drew her eyes like a magnet. The window was in the top right-hand corner, like a postage stamp, and the long grey wall may well have been an envelope. Together, they seemed to bear the only news from the outside world: a passing cloud, a bird perched on the sill, a bee on its daily rounds. In the spring, a nearby maple would rear its head to peep into the room. Bunches of its new leaves could be seen just above the window's lower frame, like a trickle of letters spelling the name of the country on the stamp. Sometimes it seemed to read India, as if the envelope brought tidings from home. In the summer, when the foliage had grown thicker, the leaves would spell, well, maybe Indonesia. What news could she expect from that archipelago in the Indian Ocean? She hardly knew anybody there. For that matter, how many people did she know in India now? Only a handful. Many she knew were dead, her husband included. Some had drifted away, like her daughter, vowing never to reconcile. Whether dead or estranged, they inhabited the pages of a precious photo album, her only link to her past. Now it was late fall. The trees outside had shed all its yellow and brown leaves, and a couple of twigs could be seen. What countries were spelled with 3 or 4 letters? Chad, Laos, Iran, Iraq. She had been good at geography when she was in school. That was years and years ago, and it meant nothing to anybody. She was a girl after all. It was more important that she knew how to make shapely rotis and churn curd to make butter. But it came in handy, a fascination with atlas, when she had to tutor Heman when he was in the elementary school. But these countries did not evoke any excitement in her. Then she got it. She knew what the twig spelled, USA. Stupid lady, eh? The land of the free, the land of plenty, where her second cousin and her large brood lived in such obvious prosperity. Her cousin had sent her photographs of their family holidays in California or Florida. She could never remember which, with sweeps of blue in the background, the sky and the sea, so deep and so bright, as if they used an entirely different color palette down there. In the winter, especially when it was snowing, no alphabets suggested themselves to form the name of any country. It kind of summed up her existence. A stateless person. She was an expatriate and was neither a permanent resident nor a citizen of Canada. Her son had lured her to this country, dangling before her the carrot of a better life. She got up with the gawky movements of a string puppet and went into an inner room. She opened cupboards, drawers, suitcases, and after rummaging for a while with rising desperation, she at last found the object of her quest, a photo album, her most treasured possession, which had been, her most treasured possession, which had sweet memories written in gold on the cover. She carried it to the front room and, seating herself on the bed, began to leaf through it. Many of the early snaps were in black and white and small, having been taken with a box camera by her husband. She chuckled at the old photographs of her friends and herself dressed in fashions gone by, fashions flaunted by film actresses like Savitri and Jamana. There were so many pictures, so many faces with smiles frozen on them. It was as if there was no place for grief in her album. It troubled her that she could not recall the names of some of the people in the photographs. Maybe it was a sign of advancing age. She was nearly 70. Then she stopped, turning the pages and frowned. There was something she was supposed to do, a clear instruction her jailer daughter-in-law had given her before locking her up. Only it was not so clear now. She groped in her mind, but she couldn't put a finger to it. She gave a shrug and tossed the thought out of her mind, telling herself, who cares? She smiled when she saw the childhood pictures of her son Hemu on a tricycle, Hemu eating an ice cream, Hemu dressed like Superman. When she came upon a grown-up Hemant with his wife, her smile evaporated. Curling her lips downward, she shut the album with a slap. She stared into space, but her eyes trained inward on some joyless corner in her mind. Then her eyes moved to the window high up on the wall. How inviting the pale blue sky was, with no clouds to mar its beauty. It hinted at the limitless expanse of the universe, a promise of unfettered freedom. She got up from the bed and walked purposefully, if unsteadily, to the front door and tried to open it. When it didn't, she rattled the door in annoyance. She then banged a tattoo on the door with increasing violence and stopped only when her clenched fists began to hurt. She went back to the bed and lay down in quiet misery. For a prisoner, her life was not uncomfortable. Her bed was 6 inches of memory foam. Back home in India, she had slept on a thin, loosely stuffed cotton mattress. In the summer, she would lay herself down on the bare floor, feeling the delicious cool of the stone on her uncovered midriff between the hemline of the blouse and the fold of her sari. She would rest her head on the crook of her arm, disdaining the pillow, which would have been slow cooked in the heat of the day. She had to admit she was not a captive in the real sense of the term. Sorry about my eyesight. She had to admit, sorry. She had to admit she was not a captive in the real sense of the term, more like someone under house arrest. Not for full 24 hours a day either. Yet it was more shameful to her than a life sentence for a heinous crime. What would her friends and relatives back home think? It was a mercy she couldn't recall their names. So that's the beginning of it. And for commercial break, the book is available for sale. No plastic money, hard cash, or interact. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, absolutely. After the readers, I encourage you to talk to each other, right? Like interact and buy a book if they have them here. Buy a book downstairs. Buy a book for the readers. Now we're going to go to our online guest with this advance of technology, which it's great. We are able to host people from outside the GTA. So we've got Tiff Morris. It's coming up. It's good. Okay. Yes. Tiff Morris is a Linux Mi'kmaq writer from Nova Scotia. She's the author of the award-winning novellas Green Fuse Burning and poetry collection Elegies of Rotting Stars. Her work has appeared in the Indigenous horror anthology Never Whistle at Night, as well as Nightmare Magazine, Uncanny Magazine, Apex Magazine, amongst others. So this might be scary, folks.
Well, Alan, I'm so happy to be joining y'all from beautiful Mi'kma'ki. Greetings to Treaty 13 and anyone joining online from elsewhere. Magic of the internet. I'm very appreciative. I'm going to start out reading from Elegies of Rotting Stars. These poems, they shift between English and Mi'kmaq. So anytime I have Mi'kmaq, English follows immediately. So it's just a chance to reclaim language for me, and it's very good practice. So this first poem is Crossroads, and it was published in Nightmare Magazine. The perfect Mindu, devil, is described as human, not human, a thought in the body, a giant human owl. Megweg, blood red, an abandoned house, the subject of applause. When he arrives, Gwiliu Megwigig, look for the red ones. Wajuet Depnuset Minje, it is now a full moon. He does not melt like shape and form, metal eyes and horns, a tree branch. Bedasenmat, he comes walking with a light or torch. When they see him walking on the road, many people are afraid to show their thoughts and be revealed. And this next one is called Milk Teeth. It was semi-autobiographical, written about an experience in Banff. Milk Teeth. That is where we left it, molting old shapes into new absences. Milk teeth on a forest floor, where whiskey-sick night shoved back light, and light ignored our departing shadows, freezing on the snow, where mountain paths breathed ice and shouted their trees into being, where wind shoved back the summer of coyotes running into dark, where truth was an abandoned house, and trouble dripped from cracked eaves, falling icicle sharp onto a door torn off its hinges, a gapped tooth in a closed shut mouth. And now I will move on to an excerpt from Carnalis, my novella that is coming out on March 23rd. So yeah, really, really soon. And this is actually the first place that I am reading from it. So I'm so honored to be able to do that with y'all, partly because in a departure from my earlier novella, which was set in Mi'kma'ki, this is set partially in Toronto and also a fictionalized Northern Ontario and Northern Manitoba. And briefly Winnipeg, but I don't think I have any scenes set there. Anyway, this is later in the novella. So the cannibal main character and her girlfriend are on the run. They're using fake names. So there's a little bit of switching between those names in this chapter. That'll help you not get too lost, hopefully. And it was really challenging to find a good excerpt that isn't too bloody and can be shared with a wide audience because it's strong subject matter, but this one's pretty good. So chapter 8. The outstretched mouth of flat road threatened to consume them. Thickets of green pines standing indifferent on empty highway. Dark, dark, dark. As night entered the windshield, Lauren wondered if the aurora borealis would wake up the sky, burn on the light leak edge of the glass, make it into a scratched photograph scarred with aberrations. As they got farther from Toronto, Lauren was surprised by her own anxiety and homesickness. This travel was like a patch of black ice, the invisible threat of it an intrusive thought. She missed the indifferent city with its many camera eyes and grids of buildings, standing impassive and nestled, full of bodies dreaming, dreading, dutifully living before death each day. Missed landscapes with which she was familiar, a sense of home, stasis, the joy of being unmoving. The second motel was a little building on the side of the highway, stretched over the road in the same fashion as a well-loved sweater. The place was modest. An attempt to make it not look seedy was heartbreakingly clear from the care the owners had put into the building. Chipper navy paint and little bright yellow accents were wasted on the dour winter scenery, the tall snowbanks slush gray that mirrored the indifferent void of sky. There were only 2 other cars in the lot. Potted plants sat beside each other, filled with pale frozen soil, waiting to become something better in the summer. "This is where I leave you," Steve said, taking their bags out of the car. "But I'll be at the Alpine tonight, if you guys aren't sick of me yet and want to have a few drinks." "Never," Alex said, deadpan. "Thanks for everything." She hobbled over to shake his hand, and he pulled her in for an awkward side hug. "I'll go in and take care of getting the room, okay?" Lauren said, grabbing their bags. "Okay, I'm tired and my leg hurts. I've had enough of today." "All right, then bye, Steve. Thanks again." Lauren handed him the money for the rides, and he pulled her into a hug that lingered too long to be casual. She was going to break his arm if it lasted just a second longer. Imagining the satisfaction of the hard, hollow snap made her pelvis ache again, hungry for something other than meat. In the motel room, Alex crashed almost immediately, cozied up under the surprisingly lovely duvet, deep in dream even with a hockey game on. Lauren turned the volume down. "I can't sleep yet. I think I'll go for a walk." Alex groaned a semi-conscious acknowledgement. "Okay, bye. I love you," Lauren said to the unmoving, wrapped white body of her girlfriend. She looked like she was in a literal cocoon. Lauren tried to ignore her worries at the long gaps in communication between them. Alex had to be anxious about all of this. Lauren knew that. But Alex said she was fine anytime Lauren got her alone, anytime she tried to gauge the mood. Alex couldn't become a liability. Lauren talked about the research she'd been doing, and Alex seemed at least mildly interested in that. Maybe Lauren would need to romance her a little, maybe make her a special dinner once they were all settled. She was already missing cooking anyway. The Alpine was within walking distance of the hotel, though the night clerk seemed concerned when she said she would walk. It was a pretty cold night for a walk, the clerk insisted. The town did have a taxi service, if she'd like to use it. "I can handle cold," Lauren said. "I did my time in Calgary. Plus, it's only a few blocks." Why had she said that? Stupid, letting her guard down, letting information slip. She thanked the clerk and hurried out of the building before she could make herself more memorable. The town was quiet with the strangled hush that tourist towns usually had in winter. The bar was a bright center of life, golden light pouring onto the sidewalk with high snowbanks, free of any people. She went inside. The bar itself was all lacquered wood, with a few mounted moose heads hung up unironically, their glassy black eyes frozen in a pose of perpetually blind witness. The walls also had travel pennants from the 1960s pinned up everywhere, stained yellow with decades of tobacco smoke. There was a strange and quaint Canadiana to the place, tacky but earnest, very Steve from what she could gather from their 20 hours together. No one looked up when she entered, and because it was small and not very crowded, she recognized Steve's ball cap and brown leather jacket right away. "Stephen," she said, pulling up to the chair across from him. His eyes were red and glassy with a drunken haze. "Jenna, good to see ya." "Likewise, buddy." It was meant to keep him in check, though it wasn't like calling men her friend would stop them from hitting on her. His ruddy skin flushed a little. "Have a seat," he said. "Thanks, Stephen." "Steve," he corrected her, pointing the mouth of the bottle at her. "Stephen is my dad. My dad's a real asshole." Lauren laughed. "Hey, we have that in common." Lauren ordered a beer. It felt weird to drink beer. She hadn't even been big on it in college. But if there was a place to do it, it was here in this bar, in this town, in this situation. She made up a story about her and Megan's upbringing. Summers at the cottage on the lake, ghost stories and campfire s'mores, working as camp counselors in the summer, losing touch through college but reuniting one random day when they ran into each other in Montreal. Steve was reasonably attentive, spending a lot of time nodding and moving between looking at her mouth and her chest. Sloppy. How are you with women, Steve? She asked. Why don't we find out? He slurred. I'm a lesbian. Aw, he said, disappointment giving him a hangdog expression. Then I can tell you honestly, not very good. Lauren laughed again. The beer was cold and her body was cold to the bone from the short walk. The air outside was mortuary freezing and tasted clean and fresh and chemical as a freezer, and she wanted the hot taste of blood in her mouth once again. I think you might do all right, actually, she said. I think you'll do just fine. He left the bar first. That was the most important thing. Lauren timed her exit. The bartender was nowhere to be found, and everyone else seemed too drunk or absorbed in what they were doing to notice her leave. She followed him from a distance, his silhouette stumbling a little, occasionally sauntering sideways. Lauren was fast in the winter cold. She felt almost like she was floating, lighter than air, a spirit on wind. The hot, bright center of a comet, ready to burn in the churning chaos of the atmosphere of some far-off and different planet. Who knew what species she could make extinct in one nuclear bright crash? And I will stop there because it gets bloody from there. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for taking varied sensibilities into account. I, for one, will be reading the cannibal book. Which of course, with them being in Nova Scotia, we don't have for sale here tonight. Well, you said it's not coming out quite yet. Right, okay, so when it comes out, it'll probably be at Little Ghost Books, if you wanna go there, and of course, all of your local indie bookstores. Last up, we have Rieta Sani Rizaki, born in 1981. You put your birth date in here. Is a Beninese Canadian writer. His debut short story collection, Deux Cercles, won the Trillium Book Award for French language fiction in 2010. And his novel La Main de Man won the Prix Robert Clich in 2011 and was shortlisted for the Governor General's Award for French language fiction in 2012. Born in Cotonou, Benin, Sani Rizaki first moved to North America in 1999 to study computer science at the University of North Carolina. After graduating in 2002, he struggled to find a job until registering for a master's of computer science at the Université de Montréal in 2004, and he wrote his first short story in 2006 after witnessing an Asian man struggle to order food in a fast food restaurant because of difficulties with language. Deux Cercles was published in 2009. The Hand of Iman, an English translation of La Main de Man, was published in 2025. Brienne?
Well, I saw.
Who's that?
Those problems. So I'm from Benin, West Africa, and I've been here for quite a while. So I immigrated to Canada, came to study. I think biography was pretty extensive, so we're not going to go over it again. But the point is, whenever I go back home, right? And I want to complain about how hard it is out here, and long winters and sacrifices. Nobody cares. All they want to know is, how did you make it? Tell me. They take notes because they're coming too, right? And if you don't like it so much, fine, stay here. I will place you over there. But and so it's funny in a sense, but it also shows there's a dream, and everybody subscribes to that dream, which is sometimes dramatic. There's those of us who, got in the plane and we got here and we were fine, but then there's other people that maybe jump on canoes and then dive across the sea, right? So when I was young, when I was younger, I saw this documentary about these boys. I think it was in Senegal, and the focus of the documentary wasn't so much on the children that jump on the canoes, but they were gone, but their families, right? There was a particular bit where they were asking a mother, do you know if your child ever reached? And her answer, something about something in her eyes, she said, I don't know. She did not know he was leaving. One day somebody told her, oh, your child's gone. You went to Europe, you went to since then, well, at the time of the documentary, she hadn't received letters. Maybe he made it, maybe he didn't. It never quite left me, and it stayed with me. So I decided to write a book. And it's about what motivates you to leave by all means, any means necessary. I just have to go. It cannot be worse anywhere than it is here, and I'm ready to die for it. But this book is about street children that grow up, and one of them decides, I can't bear it anymore. His name is Imad, and he's trying to leave. And it's the story of the people around him. Some will tell him, yeah, you gotta go. And others will tell him, no, stay with us. So it's also a love story between children that they grow up together and they survive experiences together. So let me just gonna read the first page. Scared. So this is the story of Tumani, and he's telling the beginning of the story.
I feel you.
So, Tumani. In the beginning were two hands in an exchange. I must have been 6. The first imperishable memory of my life. The hand, my father's, calloused, black, rough, dusty, and hardened by work in the fields, stretched out towards his other hand, soft, fine, manicured, and holding the largest sum of money I'd ever laid eyes on. 36 euros, and my fate was sealed. I recalled my father's face with its skin blackened by the sun, as tough as the leather of a drumhead. And he smiled. It's in my mind, unfading. The image of his raised upper lip, bearing a row of yellow teeth. I wondered what he was thinking about. What do you think about when you sell your own son? I would unfortunately learn the answer to this question many years later, when I, by then an adult myself, would sell out the one person dearest to me. I spent a long time resenting my father, not necessarily for an act, which I could have found a way to explain to myself, but rather for the expression on his face as he accomplished it. It was neither satisfaction nor sadness. My father's face bore a mask that I would spend most of my life attempting to decipher. I refuse to believe you as indifference, because what would it mean? That my life had no meaning, and that selling a child is akin to selling cattle, the mere economic transaction? Neither do I want it to be joy. For what do we make of a father happy to sell his child? Whatever the reason, I had cost 36 Canadian francs on a rainy day. Much later, I would earn the same amount monthly, and my whole being would be shaken when my employer placed the crumpled bills on my palm. The bill that had purchased me, on the other hand, were brand new. They were crisp and shiny. They were beautiful. I would later learn that the woman who bought me and asked me to call her Auntie Carol I'd stopped by the bank a few hours earlier, just before undertaking the journey that took her from the capital to my village, a little farther to the north. She made that trip regularly, at least monthly. It was her occupation. She bought children from their parents and resold them to the highest bidder. She earned a monthly stipend from the children's labor, which she used to purchase even more children. In return, the boy or the girl gained the opportunity to try their luck in the big city. 15 years later, the parents collected the fruit of their investment, the pride of having a child educated in the city, dependable, autonomous, but above all, civilized. That is, of course, if you're reading that well. I have often wondered how Auntie Carol came to pick the trafficking of children as a livelihood. For a while, I thought the reason was that she didn't have any children of her own. But over time, I came to the realization that maybe, quite simply, with the children of others, it was different. I have no memory of my mother on that day. Perhaps she had been temporarily distracted while the transaction took place. Nevertheless, I know for certain that she was aware of the situation, since she had prepared a special bundle for me. As soon as we got into town, Auntie Carol would throw away that bundle and buy me a different set of clothes to replace my last memory of my mother. She asked me if I was glad to own newer and prettier things. The truth was that, presented in finer packaging, I would be easier to sell. Despite all this, I must admit she wasn't a bad woman. I wouldn't see her much afterwards. We would never spend as much time together as we did during the trip that took us from the village to the capital. After bidding my father the last goodbye of our lives, I rushed under the rain into the back of Auntie Carol's car and squeezed in beside a man I didn't know. Auntie Carol settled into the passenger seat and the vehicle took off. I'd never ridden in a car before, but from this experience, I've retained a single memory. It is neither that of the car, nor of the landscape of red dust and rain, nor even of the features of the man sitting next to me, or of the driver. All I remember with vividness is Auntie Carol's wrist stuck between the two front seats and the gold bracelets that gleamed on it. They were so beautiful, and her fingers were so graceful. My whole life, I never saw them holding anything but banknotes. After an endless journey on a narrow countryside path that changed into a bumpy road before gradually turning into a paved road, we reached the outskirts of the city that was to become my world. We arrived in the late afternoon during rush hour. Horrified, I witnessed a nightmare of roaring engines, the choking fumes of burning fuel, and a frenzied crowd of angry men and women bellowing insults. Madmen, beggars, and street vendors ran sinuously through the slow traffic of cars. My first contact with civilization was eerie. The urban jungle, with its tall building and dusty edges, greeted me with sheer violence. As my heart pounded in my chest, I focused all my attention on my sole ally, the bejeweled wrist between the front seats. As the car drove deeper into the heart of the city, the sun was gradually setting. After a while, we left behind the main road lined up with shops and dove into a perpendicular residential alley. I could sense that our journey was nearing its end. When we stopped in front of Auntie Carol's house, the world glowed in tones of amber. Rays of the setting sun bounced off the corrugated iron sheets covering the rooftops. The houses in this part of town were enclosed in sand yards secluded from the street by tall brick walls. We got out of the car, passed through the gate into the yard, and towards the house with its shimmering roof. For the first time in my life, I set foot in a living room. I saw Auntie Carol's husband slumped in an armchair before a tiny box inside of which a man sat and spoke in a language I didn't understand. They say it's the first impression that counts. My first impression was that I was lost for good in this place.
Okay, if you can have Scott come back up, and you stay here too, so we're gonna do the Q and A. You get to sit for the Q and A though. And the tab, Derek's had your Q and A, yeah, and then we'll get Tiff up here. And we will ask you questions. Let's try to have these so you're not. Okay, sit down and tell me if you're comfortable with the light.
Like, okay, I won't look at that.
Okay, it's okay, it's not too bad?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, who's got a question?
A warning, please ask answerable questions. Otherwise, I might also give you questionable answers.
Oh, I forgot, one of them is with you, one of them is with me. So here you go. Okay. Questions?
Yeah, thank you all for those readings. I had just maybe a question about form and, because we all, are reading from, or wrote, different forms. So what made you think of like a novella for your project? What made you think of short stories? What made you think of a novel? Like, it wasn't always, that way you were, kind of, you've been sucked into that at the beginning, or was that, did that, evolve over time? Thank you.
Who wants to take that first? How did you pick your forms?
Truth to tell, right? I just had this burning desire to be a writer. I enrolled without, just with the humble school for writers, not knowing what I would. So I just thought short stories would be easier to write. And that's how I started. The first book happens to be a collection of stories. And like children's book, short stories are much more like hard, they're harder to write than a novel. I didn't know any such people. That was how, and then that's why I feel that many of the short stories I wrote for weather permitting, right? Each one could have been made into a novel. Not that I had either the skill or the patience, but they are not like short stories, like that classic short stories, right? Which is just that moment of time, like it's like a picture rather than a film, a still rather than a movie. So with mine, it was just fortuitous that I wrote my first collection of stories. And my novel, I started writing a novel, and it is more like a clutch of short stories, sewn together. Like every chapter is of a different. So many people accuse me of cheating. It's not a novel. So that is it.
How about Riyadh and then Tiff?
Fine. My publisher said it stands better. So. No, I started. No, it's true though. They do say that long stories happen, but I did start with a collection of short stories, and I think short stories allow you to. It's like a mixtape. It allows you to train different parts of your brain, train different ways of telling stories, but you still feel like it goes fast. And if you want to delve into characters, interactions, you need the time, you need to taste yourself. And I felt like I could tell the story better with more pages. As simple as that. I think the your story dictates the format. You could start writing by writing a short story, and then you realize that it's not ending. So by the time you get to page 300, you realize, oh, I guess it's not a short story. So it's more organic. I don't think you should I don't think you should force the format. I think you should be true to the story that you're telling, and after 3 pages is done, then it could be a masterpiece, right? So
Tiff, you must know if you're writing poetry
It's a great
first.
question. I really liked hearing those answers too. My writing process basically, like sometimes it'll just be a snippet, it'll be a phrase or a specific idea. And sometimes I don't know until I start writing that it's going to be a poem or a short story or a longer project. But some things I really need to have a character go through to really explore. So that's how I know it's not going to be a poem. And with Carnalis, I knew right away that it was going to be a novella and not a novel because I don't know that I could sustain that subject matter for that long myself, but other people have, and I salute them. Um, yeah, the novella format is really fun to write in because there's a bit more expansion than the short story, but you can still be very kind of quick with it and just like work through with a lot of intense focus.
Thank you so much. Other questions?
I have a second part to the answer.
Yeah.
If you don't mind. I think that I'm rebounding on what I said earlier. For me, I think it's a trap to want to finish. I know we are in a society where things are products and you gotta finish your book, or maybe you got your publisher breathing down your neck, but you need to tell them to back off because trying to finish my way in the story. I think well, good stories or maybe stories that the writer took the time exploring each page, not worrying about when am I gonna be done, right? So I would say that too. I would say live within your story and let the story, repeating myself, tell you when it's done, it would know, right?
That's great.
Thank you. My question is for anyone. It is when your characters go into somewhere painful. And what you read me up sounded very hard. How do you get there and yeah, what do you do to get there, and is it as painful for you as it would be in your life? Or
It can be painful, right? Also, it depends if you're an immersive writer, which I am, right? So for me, I need to get to the core, the truth of the character. Not even necessarily when I'm writing. Sometimes you build the character as you're doing other things, audition, I don't do that, but you get my point. You're doing other things like shopping, whatever that I do. But and it can hit you at any random time. So you're pushing your cart and you drop it in chips, cookies, Coca-Cola, all the good stuff. And you're thinking about, oh, what would Iman do all that? And it can hit you suddenly to the point that it drives you to tears, right? Because they're real to you. Sometimes your world building, your stories, your character become even more real to you than the person speaking to you in front of you. You lose that reality in your world. So it can be really hard to get into it. Sometimes it can be hard to get out of it. Truth is, I wrote my second book because I wanted to get out of the first one. Overly thinking about it, and I felt like I needed the distraction. Well, it wasn't so sure because I fell into this one, and so I needed to get out of that one too. But the idea is it's like acting. You need to immerse yourself. If you feel it, other people will. If you don't feel it, maybe nobody else will.
That
Okay. Hello, my six. 2 cents worth. Generally, my life was not a primrose path. So whatever has been even remotely painful, I don't attempt at all. Not even as, exercising my, whatever this. So, all the things are really fiction or sometimes taken from newspapers and this. So there could be some poignant stories, some painful stories, but I have that arm's length, distance between what I'm writing. So for me, it's like a painter, supposing he had to a painful scene, like it could be even say crucifixion. He does it right with a. So my writing is something like that. Like actually, I was quite good at painting, so all my writing is I imagine the scene and fetch words to describe it. And that's why one of my friends was conducting a memoir class, right? So, and I introduced him to many writers, and he said, "Why don't you join?" I said, like there are things I wouldn't want to write about my life, right? So it's out of question that I would write something like memoirs, right? Not even as catharsis or something like that. It's just so when writing, as you said, painful, traumatic scenes, it's I write from a safe remove.
Tim, how do you deal with emotional, dangerous, hard subject matter?
Yeah, it's interesting. I didn't intend to be a horror writer, but I think a lot of the stuff that I wanted to express, horror became a really great genre for expressing it and writing it like I know that bad things are going to happen to these characters because that's part of how these ideas are being expressed. Um, so yeah, that bit of remove is also helpful. My novella Green Fuse Burning, the character was kind of based on some of my experiences with grief. So some scenes, I would write and I would just have to be like, okay, that is enough for today. I'm going to go do something completely different. I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to watch Gilmore Girls, something really just totally, wholesome, safe feeling, and just work with that. And I think, the catharsis element of writing is helpful too, because, writers are listeners and we're feelers and, we have that empathy that is a very big strength, I think, to the writing process. But it also requires us to have that, self-awareness to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves and our readers.
Thank you so much. One more question?
Thank you. And again, whoever's comfortable sharing, and please excuse the ignorance of my question because I'm not a writer at all. But I was just curious about, and Rad, you alluded to it in terms of writing what sells or like the book being the product. I mean, there's no denying we live in this capitalist hellhole. So I'm just trying to understand how do you balance incentives that are obviously skewed towards what sells right? And then without that interfering with your creative process, like how do you balance then what needs to be written that will win the hearts of audiences or versus something that you really want to write about?
It's great.
I don't balance it. I don't care, right? It's somebody else's job to sell the book. And to be honest, you should write for yourself, right? This is my opinion. If nobody likes it, at least you did, and it's good enough. And if it doesn't sell, get a job. And I'm saying it jokingly, but I think it's good to get a job because you can be free to write. I think writing is a process that's liberating, and to constrict it with other limitation, it defeats the purpose, right? If all you do is, well, then some people just write as a job, not me. So I mean, maybe in a privileged situation where I can write whatever I want, right? I spent almost 10 years writing my last book. not knowing whether anybody was gonna like it or not. I remember my close friend, my brother, my sister, they love it because they love me. Everything I write is amazing, right? But that doesn't mean anything. Well, I mean, it does. I mean, but I think bottom line is, if you write things that sell, you're doing a disservice to yourself because the point is to express something, not to sell it. If you've written a bunch of things and you couldn't express yourself, why did you spend the past 3 years writing? You're still in the same place that you started it.
Can you speak into the microphone, please?
Yeah. Like, in fact, mostly echo what Riyad was saying about short stories, right? Not selling. After I enrolled in Humber School for Writers, right, there was a provision that they would provide agent. And the agent gives the manuscript to a professional reader. Actually, the report was almost a song of praise for my short stories, my very first book. But she flatly refused, the agent who's, attached to Humber School for Writers, saying short stories don't sell. And even when I was writing, they give a mentor, right? And my mentor was one of the celebrated Canadian writers, Elizabeth Harbour. In fact, she called me to say that why don't you, one of the stories, why don't you develop into a novel because short stories? But I was new into all this. Then I told her that character, that in that story, which she thought was very, amusing character. I said, I like one of our other guests, I won't be able to live with that character for that, 200 pages. So I just said I won't be able to, do that because I was just started writing. And that's what it is, about short stories selling. And one more point you said about how lucky you are that you have your brothers and then like Ramya's Treasure. Toronto Star praised my publisher for publishing it, But my wife, she couldn't get through that book at all. And my short stories, my something are the worst writer. So that's life, but that's the life of a writer. We are meant, writers are, we write because we are sensitive. But if you want to be published, you must have a very thick skill.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know any writer who loves the business end of it. Working with kind of the indie sphere too, like something like Amazon is a necessary evil. So even though it goes completely against my politics as an anarcha-feminist, I know that it remains an affordable option for some people, sometimes the only option for some people. It's not great. It's the system that we live in. I'm certainly not going to shame anyone for taking what's available to them, right? But I definitely encourage people to buy from indie booksellers and from indie publishers and things like that when they can. In terms of the writing life, yeah, I agree. Like we just have to write what's within us, and we do a disservice if we're too focused on the market. Being focused on the reader, I think, is a different thing. But yeah, we write stories that I feel like we need to tell and that need to exist. And I think that too much focus on the business end makes the art suffer.
Okay, so I think we have time for 2 more questions before 8:30. Because I kind of like to follow up on that. And what, wait, does anybody have some questions? I'm like. No? Okay, okay. Because kind of following up on that, I wonder if each of you could give us like a quick rundown of like what was your path to actually being published, right? Because you did have to do that business end at some point. You had to submit to an agent, or you had to submit to a publisher, or maybe you met somebody at a party and it was networking. Like, how did you do that actual business end to get published?
After coming to Canada, finding a publisher or finding a job, both were just as difficult. Like it's all apply, no reply kind of. And one mistake I made was because I'm like a pyro writer, right? So I started sending my manuscript to very small publishers. Don't ever make, it's better you send to but the top in the topmost publisher and go down that if you want. But don't do this, I was sort of modest and sent it. What happens with very small publishers is they can only produce 6 books a year or something. So they are very, very finicky about what they publish. So don't make that mistake, right? Just boldly send it to the best publishers, but keep changing. And but I had to send it, not too many. And don't look initially in your career to find an agent, right? Agent can get you, but because it's easier to get published than to find an agent. So it's just to be aware of, right? So some of you might be very fortunate to have an agent, but don't go. My advice is don't take that route. And how did I get published? Is that try to join a writers community, start sending your stories, for publication, as if like uh, creating a reputation for yourself, right, in the world of writing. And what happened was that it was also coincidentally that Mississauga Arts Council, right, asked me to submit my stories. I told them none of my stories are published. They said it's okay, for an emerging writer. So I did that and I got the prize, though the other 3 were had books published. Right? So that sort of helped, right, pitching my book. And then I submitted my story to Diaspora Dialogues. They also, they accepted, and the prize there was they give you a mentor to improve your stories, right? So these 2 things I had already sent to Guernica my manuscript. When I got these things, I sent another email saying that, right, that my stories which are there in that manuscript, these are the things that happen. So maybe it helped. So because they were, I think, not decided. No, one they can make out, right, a new writer, and most probably English is not my mother tongue, kind of, right? It could be anything, but they were, or I'm very, I want to write like the way I really want to write and not, succumb to the dictates of candidate. I don't want to do that at all. So maybe, it didn't sort of gel with them, that kind of, right? I don't think my style was bad, right? You all heard it, but still, whatever it is. So, but then it helps you to get your name, sort of around, right? Like that you're acknowledged as a writer even before you sort of send it to the manuscript to the publisher.
Oh, yeah, you want to go to Tiff first? Yeah, Tiffany.
Sure, yeah. That's really well said. I'm really grateful for my path, being so forged by writing community, especially just kind of like working with different publications from magazines to small presses to, medium presses and writers organizations, like really fostering that community. I mean, I know we call it networking, but really I prefer to think of it as community building because it's, people lifting each other as they rise is the best case scenario for that and what I really try to nurture. And that's how I came about hearing about Stelliform Press, who published Greenfuse Burning. A writer friend connected me with Shane Hawk for Never Whistle at Night. And another friend connected me for Nictating Books. So just, maintaining those relationships. And moreover, I think that there are a lot of really skilled writers out there, and it can be a tough business. It can be very humbling and sometimes ego destroying, no matter what stage of your career that you're at. And it's really a matter of endurance. So that combination of skill and endurance and community building, I think, is a really great path for anyone who's trying to get to publication and to enjoy their life as a writer.
Thank you so much.
Just trying to come up with a story, man. I mean, I can tell you my story, but I don't know how helpful that's going to be, but I'll try. For one, I never wanted to be a writer. I never wanted to publish anything. I didn't care. I just like writing. I've been writing since this is like 7. I don't know. Much better writer back then, but it is what it is. But so then I actually finished my first book and put it somewhere and forgot it. And I was done because I write for myself, I explore stories, many books I started, didn't finish, some computers lost. My publisher almost shot herself and she heard that all those stories, oh no, they're somewhere. So it was never the publishing path. To me, it's really, I want to write because I like it. This is how I understand the world. This is how it's my language with myself. That being said, so I finished a collection of short stories, and at some point I felt like I was done. I put it somewhere, and a friend of mine came to visit me one day. I was busy. She was bugging me, so let me just read something while I'm doing my stuff. And she was going through my computer, going through the allowed folders. And so she read my stories, right? And she, oh my God, it's amazing. Oh, wow. But I mean, she's my friend. I was like, yeah, sure. And she said, oh, I know a publisher, right? That should help you publish the book. And I was like, money? What? Sure. So please go on. And so she submitted to the person that she knew. So again, it's like contacts, right? It's reading between the lines. People know people that know people. So that person came back to me all sweaty. Oh my God, this is the best book I've ever read. I can't believe he couldn't sit down, he couldn't stand up. He was just so excited about it. I said, oh, I must be a genius. And but then he said, small publisher, and he said, yeah, I mean, I don't publish a lot. He showed me like a few books he published, and he said, you need to pitch in. It's like, I mean, financially. And he said, yes, and it's like, I mean, there are scammers out there, so I was like, I don't know. I mean, you sound like a scammer, so I walked away. I'm here to make money, not give you, so please let's understand the relationship here. But the point is, he had published some books, right? So, and that was my first judgment by a professional. Even though maybe he was a scammer, but he did publish people, or maybe he was just a very small press, but he needed contribution, and could happen. It depends on what you want, right? Well, I didn't want that. I just was, I wanted free money with no investment. So what I took from that is there is a possibility that people like the book, right? Other than my family. And so it drove me to curiosity. Oh, I guess I could show people other publishers. That's the entry into me thinking that for the first time. I must have been writing for 20 years then. And but I didn't really necessarily believe in myself. I believed that anybody would want to read my story. So I didn't want to again put any money into mailing or shipping or whatever. So I was in school at the time, so I went to school, printed it out for free, stole some paper. And I Googled the publishing houses that were close by. So this is a hint into low budget searching for publishers. So I walked to them because they put as many obstacles as they can because there's a lot of submissions. So you can't email it, you need to buy it has to be printed. So at the time, they didn't want email, they wanted a manuscript. So less people willing to mail, so that's less people to read. So I basically submitted my manuscript to all the people that I could walk to on foot. And one of them answered, oh my God, this is amazing. So that's the end of the story. But the point is, I, I think there are two kinds of writers. There's me, that I don't care to be published. I'm sorry, it sounds bad, but and then there are the people, I think most people, you write, you want to share your story, whatever. Um, First is you need to believe in yourself. Um, Writers are just regular people, and if you connect to your story, somebody else will. Just a matter of finding the right person, right? And just because I must have walked and submitted, I do things with a little bit of OCD, so I must have submitted it to 20, 40, one answered, right? So just because they don't like your story does not mean it's a bad story. It just means they don't like it. So those are the things that I've learned with time. And yeah, so looking for a publisher, it's a hit and miss, right? You just so sorry to everybody that kind of publishes what you like, that fits with your style. And one person may say yes. If they don't, keep writing. That would be my little pep talk.
Thank you so much. All right, last call for questions from the audience. Last call, okay. Yep, do you have one? No, okay. So there's one thing that we end every Brockton with. This is gonna be a bit difficult. Some people have a trouble with it, but we want you to recommend a book. One book, just one. Not all of your favorite books. Not, we're already recommending your own books. Okay, it's funny. You should write comedy. Yeah, one book that you've read somewhat recently that you think our audience should read. Who's got one?
I can suggest a book which I was suggesting to Via. It is, sorry. I can suggest a book, but I don't think it's published in Canada now. But I think it's available Amazon. I write about diaspora fiction, right? And this person wrote the book in the 1960s, an Indian writer. Those days she was the highest selling Indian author called Kamala Markandeya. She wrote this book, The Nowhere Man. I call it the Bible of diaspora literature. It's so powerful and hard hitting. One of the scenes in the book, in cinema, if I were to compare it to cinema, you might have heard about the Odessa step sequence, of Eisenstein's. There is a scene in that which is so impactful, and it's diaspora and written then. It could have been written yesterday, and if you think it was written 60 years ago, how prescient it was. So just repeat it. It's called The Nowhere Man. It's been republished, and the author is Kamala Markandeya.
Thank you. Tiffany, Fred?
I also really, one of the most marking, I don't know if it's the word, I don't know. For me, it's also an Indian writer. They write beautifully. It's called The God of Small Things. Yes, and it's Arundhati Roy.
Yes,
Yeah.
It's amazing, and I don't want to spoil it, but it's about, well, from what I remember, it's about two small children that committed a murder. They're small, they're like 7, and I believe it's accidental, and they hid it from everybody, and it's about the growing up, the guilt and how that deed separated them, brought them together, that secret that they share. The most beautiful thing about the book is the voice. You can hear the children's voice. It's I don't know how she did it, but it's not childish, but as you're reading it, you can hear the thought process, the maturity, your inside the mind of a child, and to me that was mind blowing.
It won the Booker Prize.
Yeah. Tiffany?
Whenever I get asked a question like this, my mind goes completely blank, and I'm like, I've never read a book in my life. What do you mean? I'm going to recommend Infinite Citizen of the Shaking Tent. It's a poetry book by Liz Howard. It's very good. I think it also won a prize, but I'm not sure which one.
Yeah, we've had Liz Howard at Brockton before.
Oh,
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
She's one of my favorite poets, so
Yeah, highly recommend Liz Howard and all of these books. And we will be posting all those book recommendations up on our social after the fact. And thank you everybody for being here. I'm just gonna tell you a little bit about our next Brockton. It is, if I can go somewhere where I'm not blinded, May 13th. Thank you very much to the Toronto Arts Council and Access Copyright. Those are our funders for this season. May 13th, we'll be back in person here at Black Day Bookshop and on the YouTube channel. So our dear audience can stay tuned. And reading glasses problems, okay. So we will have readings from Cheryl Isaacs, Alistair Thompson, Matthew J. Trafford, and Justin Enchanta. And as always, we'll have a guest speaker to talk about the art, craft, or business of writing. And that's all, folks. Thank you very much.
Malaliok.